Hello, everyone. Welcome to another forecast. My name is Dr. Claire Moon of Aligning Light Astrology, and we are going to be talking about the second part of March today. So if you are joining me for the first time, welcome. There is a chat box over to this side of your screen. You can chat there with other astrology nerds. You can ask me questions. This is not like a comprehensive forecast, but if there are certain configurations, transits that I have not touched on and you would like me to, oh, Practical Astros, hello! Yeah, let me know if I'm skipping anything you wanted to look at. We have familiar people in the chat. Welcome. It's good to see you. I think I'm gonna change my mic around, but let me pull up the clock here. All right, this is right now, at least from my neck of the woods, Virgo rising, moon applying to Jupiter, which is why I chose to do this right now. Hopefully y'all are having a nice little pocket of today right now. All right, so I guess before we jump into March part 2, I like to reflect a little bit and see how the first part of March is. So if anyone has anything they want to share, feel like sharing about your first couple weeks of March, let me know. Otherwise, I get my notes pulled up here. So I guess what we have had happen is we are done now with Mars and Venus squaring Jupiter and Uranus, kind of our passion pair, the motivation, the desire, what we want, and some invigorating exuberance to get shit done lately. At least that's how I've been feeling about it. So we did that. We did the whole soupy pass of the Pisces planets, the thruple. We had the thruple. So I know when I was doing my last forecast, we were like in the middle of the thruple, the Mercury Sun Saturn conjunction in Pisces. So hopefully we've squeezed whatever juice we need to squeeze out of that. Well, for me in my bank account, it's like squeezing, nothing from a stone. But I digress. And then we also had Mercury move through Neptune. And now we're going to have the sun moving through Neptune. So since we talked last, now Mercury has gone into Aries. They've dried off their little sea legs and they are, wanting to less feel and think and analyze and meaning make about what's going on in life and now act on it. The ideas, we would like to act on it. The thinkings, the thoughts, we would like to say them. Maybe fire, action, doing. So if that has been you for the last week or so, not even. Mercury's clipping along, aren't they? They've only been in here for a few days since the 10th, 9th or 10th. So yeah, we got a new Mercury, very different than the one we've been having lately. They're also, we'll be talking about visibility this month. Mercury is going to be changing some visibility stuff. Pretty much right now, they're going to be coming out of the beams for a little bit. We'll be able to see them in the evening sky. And Saturn, we'll also be talking today about Saturn becoming visible again and what that means. So those are kind of the things in the sky that I've had my eye on. Venus, she used to be in Aquarius. Now she's in Pisces. So for those of us who are dabbling in the Hellenistic astrologies, and we're always talking about our made-up space points. Well, they're not made up, but I like to call them imaginary space points. Dignity, they're not super imaginary. They're actually pretty real. But anyway, Venus has gotten a ton more space points being in Pisces where she is exalted. She's got to deal with Saturn. She's eventually going to be dealing with Mars, but we like a Venus and Pisces connection, more free flowing, artistry, creativity, connecting with spirit, all of that kind of Piscean stuff. Now we get Venus bringing in connection, Venus bringing in our values, what we prefer, and our creativity and spirituality. It's a good time to lean into that. What else? I think that's about it. I will say last thing, I guess, about reflection notes. Um, I personally think it's so, I have a Pisces moon. Like I love Pisces. I'm very biased, but it is so refreshing, like at least for me, to feel Mercury in Aries. I've been noticing like little conversations that normally I might kind of beat around the bush or be more passive about or whatever. I'm just saying shit. So let this be, it's everything's a coin with two sides. It's like depending on who you are, if you are someone who, like me, has a harder time with communicating with my loved ones and like is a whole different ball game than me spouting off on here, whole different me. If you're having a hard time with that, I think Mercury and Aries can be an awesome aid in helping us to communicate with more bravery and assertiveness. Now, if you are someone who doesn't struggle with that and maybe and not for you people who have this all figured out, but for some of us who, maybe we're quick to say stuff or could use a little bit more restraint. Mercury and Aries, you might have to be really exercising that restraint muscle for the next, Mercury's going to be in here a while. So they're going to do a retrograde, as we will see. Uh, they'll be in here for, gal, let me just make sure. Check myself before I wreck myself. Oh my God, they're really going to be in here 2 months. That calls for an early game fruit punch break. I have today fruit punch made in tropical Wisconsin. Mm, it's so good. Sorry, it's a regional delicacy if you live outside of here. So yeah, that's kind of my main overall thoughts that we've about what we've had recently. Let me see if anyone's got anything to share on that note. Hello, Rachel. Rochelle, Rachel, not sure which one. Mm, yeah, Venus and Pisces. Hello, Fallen, by the way. Hi, welcome back. Hi, Clark. Two sides and the edge of the coin. Yeah, maybe it's a dice with more than one side. We don't want to get too complicated. Ah, thank you, Practical Astros. They're another astrologer, by the way, for anyone in the chat. Practical Astros, go follow all of their things. Great astrologer. Coming in with my beloved Virgo details. Mercury is going to be in Aries until May. So that's going to be the vibe for a while. That's kind of why I was like, I know Pisces can be kind of soupy, but I think hopefully we all use that time to rest in certain ways because now it's going to be like, you know, action town. Whether or not we go straight forward, probably not Mercury retrograde, but action town for sure. So let's do our list of dates. So we've already had Mercury entering Aries on the 9th. Pisces New Moon was on the 10th. We had Venus entering Pisces on the 11th. And now on the 16th, approximately give or take where you are, Saturn starting to become visible in the morning sky right before the sun rises. On the 19th, we're going to have our spring equinox and the sun is going to enter into Aries. On the 22nd, Mars entering into Pisces. And then on the 25th of March, we're going to have our lunar eclipse in Libra. Now, I am going to do what I haven't been doing lately, and I'm going to go a whole month ahead a little bit and look at that April 8th one as well. So the second of that eclipse pair, April 8th. So just looking at this, um, we can see stuff's getting out of Aquarius, stuff's moving into Aries. There's going to be more and more action as this more and more busyness probably or efforting in probably the Aries part of your life progressively as March continues. Um, between March 25th and April 8th, that's our little eclipse window. So however you deal with eclipses, navigate eclipses, there's lots of types of thoughts about how to do that. Your timing for doing whatever you need to do around eclipses, especially between March 25th and April 8th. Now, of course, there's a little bit of time before and after that, for me personally, when there's an eclipse, I kind of like to wait until that lunation cycle closes off at the next new moon before I start to like implement or integrate stuff I learned during the eclipse. But that's not a suggestion for other people. That's just what I do. Uh, so yeah, those are our dates of interest. Kind of moving forward, general thoughts for the next couple weeks. We are going to have Sun meeting Neptune, causing a little bit of uncertainty, nebulousness for the next few days, really. So if you're listening to this, today is March 13th. I mean, already are we within 3 degrees? Let me just double check. Yeah, we are just about 4. We're about at 3 degrees, the sun moving into Neptune. And Hellenistic astrologers really like that 3-degree range in terms of when we might most vividly experience that aspect. So if there is, anything going on where you need to have a lot of logistical precision, a lot of good communication. Now is like we're going to have to be extra careful, I think, this week about over communicating, making sure everyone's on the same page. Knowing Mercury's in the fast lane, they're going to be wanting to buzz by. So, maybe it's miscommunication or uncertainty, and then going too fast, adding on to that. So that's our little marker to slow down. If you're making an astrologer bingo board, side note, I think this is a worthy digression because I think about it all the time. Back in pharmacy school, me and my peers we made bingo boards for all of our professors, basically, and like kind of teasing them a little bit. Like we had a professor who would always say, bear in mind. And so one of the things on the bingo card was whenever that professor would say, bear in mind. So for the next 2 months, my thing on the bingo card is going to be like, Claire Moon tells people to slow down. Everyone take a shot when Claire Moon tells people to slow down. Everyone slow down. Oh my God. I won't let anyone know what my squares on the bingo board will be. Oh, screaming underwater. Yes. Practical Astros is saying screaming underwater for Sun and Neptune. And then, you got Mercury, our voice, and Aries wanting to say stuff. And think about it too. Okay. How effective and how good does it work out if we scream underwater? If it is absolutely necessary, like, yeah, it's going to help. But boy, what a predicament. What else is going on? Venus and Saturn are co-present. So other just general notes for the next 2 weeks before we get into the details. We also have Saturn and Venus co-present. Venus is moving towards Saturn. So just increasingly over the next couple weeks, the themes of restraint, slowness, delays, challenges with Venus stuff. Healthy boundaries too. Saturn is discipline, healthy boundaries with Venus stuff, commitment with Venus stuff. What's Venus stuff? Relationships, yum-yums, what we enjoy, what we value, what we prefer. So Saturn, maybe we're restrained about those yum-yums, or maybe we are creating healthy boundaries where I'm actually able to experience my pleasures in a really cool way. Maybe with Saturn being the Lord of doubt, maybe there's some doubt in our relationships. Or kind of, I think about Saturn coming in with their little clipboard, like a little auditor, making sure everything is just right, before proceeding, or really doing kind of an inventory, seeing how things are going in our relationships and having a really realistic point of view about it. Saturn is realism. It's always interesting having this planet of realism in the Piscean place of idealism and fantasy and kind of the best case versions that we aspire toward. That's super useful. Nothing wrong with having an image to aspire toward. But Saturn comes in and says, well, here's what's really here. And that can be really difficult depending on what we're looking at. So, having a lot of compassion as well. I guess last thing I'll say before I get to the compassion piece, though. So with this pessimism, I think sometimes when people sound pessimistic, we conflate that with them sounding smart or like, I don't know, knowledgeable. I think there's a part of that that's true. It's like the wisdom of experience. Fool me once, shame on me, fool me twice, never fool me again. Um, but it's like, mm, anyway, having compassion with all that whole chestnut. So, with the realistic nature, not so pessimistic that we're being unrealistic in a different direction. We don't want to get too pessimistic, but using whatever kind of realism Saturn is bringing in here with our relationships to improve them, or whatever we need to do with relationship. So it doesn't have to be a bad thing. If anyone's worrying about Venus and Saturn coming together, I mean, of course it can be rejection and saying no in relationship, but that's also part of being in relationship is saying no sometimes, drawing limits, having healthy boundaries. So this might be the curriculum for us and especially in the Pisces part of your chart. So for this hypothetical Virgo rising, this would be in their seventh house of partnership. Really, for me personally, it's in my money place. This is a spending freeze. I'm not allowed to spend. I just had taxes run through the house and just destroy everything. So yeah, for me, I'm restraining my yum-yums a little bit in my second house. But that's all month, basically. Let me see. Yeah, and then like on the 22nd, Mars gets in here. Now, Venus does eventually break away with Saturn. So like the strongest of all of this kind of auditing of relationship realism with what brings us joy, taking responsibility for our values. That could be another thing. What do we value? How are we going to take responsibility for making sure that we have what we value in our life? How do we take responsibility for alignment? That's going to be the most intense until about the 22nd. And at that point, Venus will start to separate from Saturn. And I think things will lighten up a little bit. So yes, throughout the month, yes, Venus and Saturn are going to be together for a good month. So we've got time, to work on some of these things or work through doubts, healthy doubts, unhealthy doubts, whatever they are. But yeah, that was my little riff on Venus, Saturn. And I think that takes care of my general thoughts. Nope, actually, there is one more general thought. So a lot of the stuff that's happening besides the eclipses, so that's the one caveat to this statement, but besides the eclipses, for the most part, like all the stuff that happens this month over the next month, Venus and Jupiter can see it and witness it. And that gives a quite a helping hand. So, for instance, this Mars-Saturn conjunction that we'll talk about, even though that can be challenging, Venus and Jupiter are able to witness it by aspect or by co-presence and are able to give resources and help and assistance. And so it's not just them it's not just the challenge in a vacuum. So I did like to see that for the next couple weeks as a big mitigating factor in how these things might play out. And also that very mixed bag energy for the next few weeks, with the Malefic, especially in the Pisces areas of our chart, very mixed bag when it comes to what's happening there. And how do you know what the Pisces part of your chart is? So I guess the last thing before getting into the details, the best way to use this information today, if you are familiar with my style, I usually use rising signs when I do horoscopes or work on horoscopes with people. So if you can find your rising sign, I like the Chani Nicholas app the best for apps as far as that goes. But if you find your rising sign, then you can find the sign of the area of action. So for Pisces in this instance, with Mars, look with Mars, looks like the morning of the 14th in the central time zone. So maybe mind your own business moment or leave early for work or something if you're in the central time zone. If you are more globally east, this is Thursday afternoon, Thursday evening. So this, at the very least, sometimes it's just kind of some tension. Just a little bit of tension, maybe just internally, maybe externally. It can be anywhere. But the moon running into a square with Mars, usually a bit of a tense moment, tense few hours at least. Again, that's Thursday morning in Central Time Zone. Globally, the more east you get, that's more afternoon, evening on the 14th. This is not when, like, say you're going to ask someone on a date. This isn't when I would ask someone on a date, for instance. It's very invigorating. We can feel like a sense of urgency. So, this could also just be, the Thursday tomorrow, if Mars is putting in a lot of effort into analyzing and thinking about stuff, and then the moon is in this place of Taurus that has so much to do with maintaining routine and maintaining resources. Maybe on Thursday, on the 14th, we're feeling some stress about resourcing, how to maintain things, maybe some stress about where we're placing our effort, how to maintain that effort, placing it there. So just don't be too hard on yourself, but might be somewhat invigorating. And on the 15th, so on the 15th, we do have a malefic enclosure of the moon. For anyone who you're listening to this for the first time, as far as like teaching you all how to fish on your own, how to do this stuff on your own, I like to use astroseek.com. I like their calculator for this, www.astroseek.com. Not a friend of the show, I just like them. And they have all these cool calculators, but you can even Google like benefic enclosure calculator or malefic enclosure calculator, and it should come up as like one of the first options on Google. Anyway, what is it? It's a time. So any planet can be enclosed. However, I'm usually looking at the moon. Like, when is the moon? Because they're the fastest moving ones. So they're doing this the most frequently. But when is the moon getting sandwiched in between rays from the other planets? And when are those rays that moon is being sandwiched in between? One of those good vibes, one of those not so good vibes. And we've got kind of a crunchy one. So let's just look at the moon as it enters into Gemini. Oh. So anytime the moon is entering into Gemini, just because Saturn is overcoming it with a square here, a fancy way of just saying Saturn is earlier in zodiacal order. They're a bit more powerful in this position. They have a bit more say in the interaction with the Gemini planets. And so any planet moving into Gemini, it's running up against Saturn, kind of saying, hey, have you done your homework? Is this sanctioned? Or did we think about the consequences? And it can be kind of a serious tone. So it's not super warm and fuzzy. And especially if you're like a night baby, if you were born at night, or you have a lot of planets or points in these mutable, like Sag, Gemini, Virgo, Pisces, these moon and Gemini transits have been kind of not the most pleasant lately. Now, we do get a little bit of a band-aid on that because Venus is now up here. So the first planet that the moon is going to have a conversation with when it enters into Gemini, at least the first visible planet, is going to be Venus. So that softens the moon's entry into Gemini now while we have Venus up here, which is nice. And then the moon's going to run into that square with Saturn anyway, though, after it. So it's like there's a little bit of a sweet note. And then on the 15th, we still get that little bit of a speed bump. So the moon is going to be applying to this square with Saturn on the 15th. And then once it gets past that, its next aspect is actually going to be a trine with Mars. And so we see the moon, kind of traveling in between 11 and 24 degrees of Gemini. It's going to be sandwiched in between these rays from Saturn and Mars. Now, a trine from Mars, it's not that bad, as far as like malefic enclosures go, which sounds so spooky. Uh, and it's like, it's kind of the extreme intense energies. It's not necessarily bad. It's not necessarily unproductive or not, it's not necessarily even something to worry about. But these are energies that are more extreme and more intense. And so on the 15th, just know that we're going to have to run some kind of energetic gamut when it comes to, Saturn, high standards or delays, barriers, Mars, taking actions, getting through stuff. So that actually seems like kind of, maybe an intense like pressure point for the moon that day on the 15th. But we're moving away from Saturn challenges and difficulties, and we're moving toward Sun and Mars action moving forward. So I guess then my advice on the 15th is if you are having some challenges or delays, barriers, hang in there till the end of the day on Friday or even till the 16th and see if it moves ahead after that. So you may not be doomed on the 15th, but especially from 7:05 p.m. Central Time on the 15th to March 16th at 8:02 p.m. Central Time. So it does last a whole day. Geez Louise. We just have to hang in there. Yeah. So then, uh, I think it's also a first quarter moon. So that's another kind of, we're pushing through the first piece of tension of this lunation cycle. So yeah, the 15th, we're gonna get through it. We're gonna be meeting a trine with Mars, which does feel more progressive. What else about the 15th? So then on the 16th, more of that Mars moving through the delays, moving through the challenges. And let's talk a little bit about this Sun Neptune business. So by this point on March 16th, the sun is at 26 degrees Pisces, Neptune is at 27 degrees of Pisces. Again, this is going to be the strongest for people with mutable placements in Pisces, Sagittarius, Virgo, Gemini. The moon is right here to feel it too. So, it almost makes me want to employ Mercury retrograde protocols on the 16th a little bit when the moon is applying to this square. Uh, really great for all things spiritual, artistic, material, especially with Venus around to help guide the sun and Neptune. Um, it is where the sun, usually our point of self, the sun is like our core spirit, our core soul, essence, whatever, however you want to think of that kind of immaterial, non-body self. That's the sun. With Neptune, it dissolves. And so the sense of self, of even healthy ego sometimes, that I need to be like, I'm important, I should feed myself. Like that kind of is not the priority with Sun Neptune. So great for spiritual stuff, great for connecting with spirit, connecting with other people in like a totally open way, you know. Now Saturn is here. Good. Honestly, like I live with Sun Neptune all the time. It's too much of being open. And so I like that Saturn is seeing this year's conjunction and witnessing it and being like, hey, that's not your responsibility. What is your responsibility? So, maybe that's a conversation that we have to have on the 16th. What is our responsibility? And making sure that we don't get that twisted with what's ours and what's other people's, what's not ours, what's not other people's. Um, Artistry, anything creative, anything like that. Uh, Forgiveness of the self, of others, if that's a thing that you're working on right now. Faith. Uh, this is a great day on the 16th to make vision boards and do any kind of like aspirational planning, just thinking ahead, like what you might, where you might like to place your effort. maybe in the Pisces topics, whatever house topics Pisces is affiliated with in your chart, especially there, So for me, again, just like if it's your second house, if you're an Aquarius rising, it would be about money. For this Taurus rising, maybe there's forgiveness around friendship. Maybe there is openness or some kind of spiritual insight about friends or friend groups. Maybe this is a cool time to hang out with your spiritual friends if you're a Taurus rising. Now, what it's not good for is material world details. Now, again, Saturn is here, so let's, dial that threat of nebulousness down a little bit. But could be uncertainty. Uncertainty is pretty uncomfortable. Most of us don't like that. I think the moon getting goaded along a bit by Mars might want to act on things. So just make sure, before action is taken, that you've done all the appropriate checks and balances, I guess. When it comes to aspirational things, especially if it's like trying to help someone else, this could be some kind of misplaced effort. I kind of wonder too, with this being in the last decan, this kind of martial area of Pisces, we can, if I'm going by Austin Kopic's analysis of the decans, he talks about devotion in this third part of Pisces and the potential for devoting ourselves to things really selflessly, also potentially devoting ourselves to things selflessly in a way that's harmful or not aligned, or kind of devoting yourself to the wrong thing, if that's possible. I think it probably is. So, whatever we are devoting ourselves to, this feels like a day where I'm probably on the 16th, I'm going to take the advice of the Romulans and never promise anything. Don't promise anything. That's how I'm going to handle it. Anyway, lots of things, but that very stereotypical thing I always say with Neptune stuff, immaterial things, it's helpful. Material things, maybe less helpful. There is an intersection though. A lot of our big fantasies, a lot of our big aspirations and dreams are absolutely tied to our real world manifestation, our real world creations. So again, great time on the 16th to be thinking about what you want to do. Kind of, I can shoot for the stars. I might land on the moon. Like, that's great. Or whatever that saying is. Let's see. Oh, I guess I did put a note here, and part of me hates talking about this, but it is a thing, especially with Mercury being with the North Node, which is kind of this confusing type of energy. But deception and shenanigans and confusion where maybe there's some kind of misrepresentation, but it was unintentional or just a misunderstanding. So any kind of misrepresentation or shenanigans, whether intentional or unintentional, this is where the over communication comes in, and the slowing down and the not promising stuff, and just being kind of careful about that. And, maybe pumping your brakes if you feel extra called to like devote yourself to something on this day. Not to say that it won't be the perfect time for that, just, Sun, Neptune, again, it only happens once a year. It is a good time to employ camouflage if you need to. I know there are plenty of people in circumstances where employing camouflage, I mean, animals do it all the time. It is part of life. Use that how you will. And I guess maybe this is a good time to talk about visibility. So right now, it's the 13th now, but it's pretty much starting now. Mercury is getting more and more visible. It's getting 15 degrees away from the sun. Yeah, it's 15 degrees away from the sun here. So Mercury is becoming visible after being invisible for a long time. So this is actually not the time to try to be, if you're trying to hide your thoughts or your words, it might be harder and harder and harder the more visible Mercury is, for better or for worse. If you want to be heard, if you want to be seen, the more visible Mercury is, the better. So that's going to be the case, on the 16th, and further. That's not great for going under the radar. Sun, Neptune, more so the case. Yeah, that's what I'll say about that. Kind of a mixed little thing there where you got two things that are saying different things. Now, Mercury coming out of the beams, maybe it's good to talk about that for a second while we're here. And granted, this is a gradual process depending on your location. So Mercury is going to be appearing at different parts on the globe at different times. It depends on your atmosphere, your horizon. If you have like mountains, I don't know what happens then for you, but technically Mercury is becoming more and more visible, at least until it slows down to retrograde. But, by the end of March, it'll be, what is that? 10, 18 degrees away from the sun. So visible. And when Mercury, the more and more visible they are, the more and more we get news that we were waiting for. Information exchange that was kind of either delayed, hidden, just not happening for some reason, or we were just waiting for it, can become more and more available to us. So if you have been meaning to communicate about certain things, now and onward is more the time where that might be more likely to happen. So communication, travel, commerce, Mercury stuff. Buying and selling. Maybe you'll be doing more buying and selling now that Mercury is going to be visible. What else? So we were talking about Sun, Neptune, talking about Mercury coming out of the beams. We mentioned that the 15th might be a little rocky because of the moon's relationship with some stuff, and the 16th. So the 15th and 16th, maybe busier, vigorous days, maybe crunchy days. On the 16th, now Saturn is going to be coming out of the beams. So it's their turn. And so before I was saying with Mercury becoming visible, now more apparent visibly in our lives, communication, travel, commerce, Mercury stuff, exchanges. With Saturn becoming more visible, this can be also Saturn themes becoming more seeable, available, apparent. Saturn stuff is barriers. Maybe some barriers that we didn't even know were there. Now we're like, oh, there it is. That's what's holding this whole thing up. It's not that it goes away, but now we can see what the Saturn thing is. We can see the barrier. We can see the delay. It might be really disappointing. There might be some disillusionment. Maybe we're seeing the structure, the underlying structures of stuff that we weren't aware of before. And when Saturn becomes visible, it just becomes that much more disappointing and obvious. Maybe, Saturn, they just had this rebirth through the sun. And, something with both Mercury and Saturn, they also are in charge of places. So, this is a lot. I know this is more for the advanced learners. So if you're more beginner learner, just disregard all of this. But the places Mercury rules, the places Saturn is in charge of, so Gemini, Virgo, Capricorn, Aquarius. I mean, gal, okay, so this Virgo rising person, this will be their first house, their 10th house, their 6th house, and their 5th house. All of those life topics, like all 30 of them, whatever they are, I won't get into it. All of those life topics becoming more maybe busy, apparent. We can see it. We kind of know what's going on with more clarity than maybe we have the last month. So if you've been waiting on certain news, information with Saturn, maybe you've been waiting on certain structural components. Like I can literally think of like a very physical thing where it's like I'm building a table and I've been waiting for the table legs to come in the mail and I can't finish building my table. And now maybe Saturn becoming visible is like, I'm getting the stuff I need to finish this construction. Maybe with that rebirth of Saturn, you've been going through this process of redoing your structures, redoing your boundaries about things. And now we're going to employ those boundaries. We're going to enforce the law. It's going to be more visible and apparent what those structures are. So I think this should help to validate, if throughout February there's been a lot of things up in the air, we're not quite sure how that's going to land or what that other person's going to think or how we're going to roll out this structure. I think as March progresses and we get into April, all that stuff's going to be out in the open. Um, so that's a whole thing that's going on, and it really starts kicking off mid-March. I think that's all I have to say about Saturn becoming more visible. Responsibilities and duties with Saturn becoming visible. Maybe those were getting rearranged or it was unclear what our responsibilities were. Now with Saturn visible, maybe it is more clear, for better or for worse. Limitations, commitments. Maybe the commitments have been like brand new, and it's like any new commitment, it takes time to kind of settle into a pace with someone or settle into a structure or a routine with someone. So now with Saturn becoming visible, maybe those routines or structures are more apparent in those commitments. Yeah, just man, there's so much stuff in the sky that's like very Neptune, very Saturn. There's so much chance for nebulosity and just confusion. At the same time, Saturn is really trying to keep things on the rails, make things have a container and a shape and a edge. So it's like, how do we, one thing I did want to share this month is like something that my meditation teacher shared with the class. My meditation teacher is Janice, and she talks about just letting there be confusion. Just let there be confusion. If there's confusion, I know, okay, this hypothetical, any Virgo placements usually would like to fix that confusion. It's like the opposite of Pisces. We want to have everything in its place. That's not always possible, even with our best efforts. So this month, I think, well, I wish I could go back and say this in my earlier recordings, but how do we just notice when there's confusion and just be with it? It's kind of a lifetime sport. On the 17th, we get the moon in Cancer. So these are, I like the 17th and 18th in terms of just having a moon that now is not going to be in a gnarly aspect with any of the malefic, more destabilizing planets. It is now witnessed by both of the stabilizing planets, Jupiter and Venus. So I feel like 17th might feel more restful. And then even the 18th, then we're going to have the moon running into a nice trine with the sun and Neptune. So all that kind of warm and squishy forgiveness, acceptance, one love, harmony kind of vibes. That's the vibe on the 17th, and the 18th more whatever structures, responsibilities, duties we are lovingly navigating. I think moon in Cancer is going to be able to integrate on the 17th and the 17th and the 18th what we were working through on the 15th and the 16th. So let's see if there's any notes I had. Yeah, good days to rest, make some comfort, lay low. Moon applies to Venus. Now, I guess there is a patch later on the 17th. It will be having a conversation. The moon will be having a conversation with Saturn and Mercury, which is more of a serious conversation. So it's not like, on the 17th and the 18th, we can just, if it were me, I'd be sitting in the backyard in my hammock all day or playing Animal Crossing all day. Well, I may get a healthy dose of Animal Crossing in on the 17th and the 18th. Even though they are softer days, I think there's still some room for some serious conversations or ideas. And now we are by the 18th. We're really getting into Saturn, Venus conjunction, and we're also really getting into Mercury, Rahu, North Node conjunction. So, this is quite a pairing. Antisha-wise, contra Antisha-wise, maybe sharing some amounts of light here. There's some sympathies between these planets that they might not have otherwise if we're kind of going loosely. If I'm being really strict about it, not so much, but it is an interesting combo having Pisces energy of more serious commitments and trying to meld realism with our biggest fantasies or aspirations, being really careful and thoughtful and responsive, and then very careful and thoughtful and responsive with Saturn and Venus. And then Mercury and Rahu and Aries is an entirely different energy. Not careful, not necessarily careful, not they're reactive, not responsive. So much faster paced. Rahu, the North Node. Oh, has anyone in the chat heard of Rahu and Ketu, or have you not? I always wonder if I should tell the drunk history version of this myth, but the North Node I see as a point of confusion. It is something to figure out. Whereas the contemporary modern astrologers, they go more of kind of like, this is where you go to maybe meet an aspiration of a higher aspiration in life, or this is like your future life, or, something that you need to move toward. Yes, I also see Rahu as a very confusing type of energy. And they can add this frenziedness that already can exist on its own in Aries because of that speed, the pacing. So there's very different energies here. They can be complementary. Sometimes Pisces gets too slow. They just need to say what needs to be said. So I think Mercury and Aries will really help around the 18th, 19th or so with this. But don't let things get twisted. If there's confusion because people are going too fast, if there's confusion because of adrenaline, we might need to be looking at that over the next week. So I say for the next couple weeks, adrenaline in the body takes about 15 minutes to begin to be broken down in any kind of meaningful way. I think it, takes longer than 15 minutes to get all of that adrenaline and norepinephrine that's floating around everywhere. All of the kind of the stress hormones that our body makes when we're stressed out. It takes a while for that to go away. So that's very Aries, that instinctual energy that's here to protect us. It's very protective. Not so great when we're trying to have healthy conflict. So sometimes it really is just being like, I'm going to go take a walk. I'm going to go do this. I'm going to go do that so we can give our bodies time to catch up. So don't be afraid to do that as much as it can be hurtful. And I feel like I heard this from David Pond, who is a synastry astrologer that I took a couple classes from, but he talked about how is it hurtful to, or maybe I'm misattributing that. This might be Joseph Goldstein. Doesn't matter. Both great teachers. While it might be dismissive or feel hurtful in the moment to leave someone hanging on a conversation that's gone too emotional or too whatever, that's probably still going to be less hurtful than saying something you'll regret. If you have a hard time pulling back or a hard time taking a break. Just throwing all that out there as kind of unsolicited advice for the next couple weeks. But I think that that's what we get when we get soupy soup, fire, and these very different energies of wanting to go fast versus be more thoughtful. Yeah, I'm going to tell the story of Rahu real quick. So why am I saying that Rahu, the North Node, is this point of confusion or frenziedness? And I get this directly from the myth of the dragon called Rahu, and Rahu is the head, Ketu is the tail. And this comes more from the Jyotish astrology tradition, the Indian astrology tradition. But basically, long story short, there was some immortal juice, and the dragon wanted the immortal juice. And the gods, the devas, were like, no, this is not for you. You can't have this. This isn't for dragons. And and he was like, no, I'm going to do it anyway. And just as he drank some of this immortal juice, they chopped the dragon's head off. And then it was like forevermore this immortal, insatiable, bottomless head of a dragon, basically, nom, 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 frenzied forever. Now, I have this business on my moon, which is why I feel street cred in talking about it the way that I do. And I am definitely more on the page, like some of my own biases and experiences with Rahu is that it is this dragon. That's why I like that story, because that's how I've experienced it. It's an unwieldy, it's like a big dog on a leash. So, that's what we have in Aries. And so I just kind of don't trust it. So our words, and Chiron is here. And whereas usually maybe I'd be like at a threat level, like yellow with this, because Chiron is also here, I am at a threat level higher than that. Because Chiron is healing, which we will talk about, and they can be cool stuff too. So for some of us, this is going to be potent healing. And I don't usually say that kind of sensationalist stuff where people are like, oh, this new moon is going to change your whole life. This thingy is going to be the whatever. Chiron and North Node don't come together very often. And so I do think, it is a special time right now for Chiron. And I do think there is a lot of potential for potent healing here. I also think there's a lot of potential for some major ouchies to happen with this. All right, I'm done. I'm done with my sermonette. Let's see what people are saying, and then I will move on. Yeah, practical astros. Talking about how when looking at Saturn and pessimism and sorry, getting all messed up with my screens. Saturn and pessimism, and how we have a tendency to hear pessimism and think that it's more correct or more wise. And practical astros saying, yes, hope may sound immature, but that kind of Saturnian, we're calling it stoicism, isn't inherently wise. So hope can be really the deal. So let me see where we are. I think we're on the 19th now. And this is our spring equinox. Sorry, folks. All right. So on the 19th of March, let's work smarter, not harder. We've got the sun moving into Aries. So the sun is going to move through Neptune for a few days. And by the time for this week, basically, and by the time we get to next Tuesday, March 19th, we're going to have the sun entering into a fire sign. And so this kind of energy of beginning, of initiations, of starting off on something for the very first time, all of that is very loud on the 19th. And in the northern hemisphere, this is the spring equinox. In the southern hemisphere, this is the autumnal equinox. So we've got different, basically the same amount of light, 12 hours, light and dark, equinox, equal night, day, equal light, equal amounts of light. And now we're going to be building up toward, in the northern hemisphere, building up toward our most light that's going to happen at the summer solstice in the northern hemisphere. So, anytime we're talking about the equinoxes and the solstices, we can get into a lot of seasonal language. And I get tripped up with this a lot when I'm talking to, God bless all of my clients from the Southern Hemisphere. I am so sorry when I always catch myself like saying seasonal words, and those aren't really helpful. Now, how do we reconcile this? I'm not going to get into it too much, but how I kind of think about it, how I reconcile this, because there's way different kind of symbolism that goes along with the spring than the autumn, when we're starting to really lose light, moving toward the winter where we don't have a lot of light. We have to understand that astrology, the Western astrology that we're practicing here, quote unquote, Western, was created in around Egypt, around, the Mediterranean cultures of Egypt and Mesopotamia. And those cultures where a lot of this stuff was developed that we're practicing now was in the Northern Hemisphere. And they were using a lot of this, stuff in a way that was really um, relative to the Northern Hemisphere. So that's kind of the root of where this comes from and why there is that kind of weirdness. But in any event, for those of us in the Northern Hemi, this is the spring equinox. And I think the most important thing to note is just that this is the time of year where we start to gain more and more and more light. And the sun in a fire sign in Aries, I mean, the sun loves it here. They're exalted. They have what we call triplicity rulership in a fire sign. So they're doing very, very well here. It might take a few days, but I think by the time we get to like the 21st, having that sun kind of dried out and in a fire sign, we might be starting to feel a lot more clear about our actions. So again, even paralleling what I was saying earlier with Mercury and Saturn having been invisible for a while and some nebulosity, maybe there, unknownness there, and those planets becoming visible, leading to clarity. And then we also have the sun moving away from Neptune into more clarity of action. So yeah, like March, and when we start to get into the end of March, I think more and more and more clarity on a lot of things in life. And then we just continue to move toward our eclipses. So let's see if there's anything else I need to say. Yeah, and just like whatever, I mean, by this time too, Venus, Saturn, very close. Um, this is where what I was mentioning earlier in the talk about the benefics being able to witness, Venus and Jupiter being able to witness the Saturn Venus business, whatever Saturn is doing in Pisces, whatever Saturn's doing to those house topics that Pisces is affiliated with in your chart. Saturn duties, delays, responsibilities, challenges. Because Venus and Jupiter can see Saturn, I think this, whatever these difficult discussions are, serious tones, it's like it's going to be okay, or there's help, or there's some amount of assistance. So just be sure also that you're asking for it, like asking for help, asking for assistance. As much as all this Aries energy has a lot to do with doing our own thing, being kind of that individual, being really authentic to what our own core motivations are, expressing ourselves with fire, all of that is very real. That doesn't mean you have to do it on your own, though. You can do your own thing. That is not the same as doing it on your own and asking for help or having someone encourage you, even just talking to somebody so that you feel encouragement. I think that is what Venus and Jupiter can bring, kind of flanking, providing this flanked support on either side of Aries. So don't forget to ask for help from people in your life if you have that privilege of having support around you. Yeah, with the sextile with Pluto on this equinox, it feels like such a powerful initiatory qualities. All of that kind of beginning and surmounting the activation energy we need to get started on something like that. Gosh, sometimes it's so hard to push against momentum or inertia, I should say. It's so hard to get started when we're stuck sometimes. And I think, the fact that we're also going to have this sextile with Pluto as the sun enters into Aries, it's like the sun gets a little bump. They are just that much more enthusiastic, that much more focused, that much more just intense about what's ever starting, which I like. Sextile is more of a helpful type of aspect. It could be, the sun in Aries beginning in such a way, maybe embodying some type of way of being informed by the Pluto stuff we're seeing. So anytime a planet is in a harmonious aspect with Pluto, I feel like it's a time to notice all of our patterns or the patterns in our relationships, whatever patterns are around, and have an opportunity to work with them in a really helpful or progressive way. So with the sun, it's like in Aries, it is like very much our embodiment. Like I am not just talking the talk, I am walking the walk. And maybe it's around changes around long-held patterns. So for me, I think what I'm going to be using this for is getting back to the gym because I've said this before, when I don't do squats, my hips start to hurt. Like it hurts to sleep with my hips. So uh, getting back into some kind of movement practice where I feel so much just stagnation and like the activation energy for me to get going again is very, very high right now. It's very hard for me. I think this will help. So I'm going to try to use this energy to give me a little push in a direction that I know I've been needing to go in. Um, so think about where you need a little nudge. And I think on the 19th and 20th, we will have a helpful nudge. Uh, let's see. I did wonder on the 19th, of course, Sun enters into Aries. We also have the moon in Leo, and that's going to be in an opposition with Pluto. So that can be, again, just more intense experiences for the day, or we might be hyper focused on something for better or for worse. So just know that if you need to really remind yourself to take snacks, take breaks, take care of yourself on the 19th. On the 20th, this feels like a pretty invigorating kind of day. The moon is going to be in a T square, kind of a loose sign-based T square. The moon is going to be getting a square from Jupiter and Uranus and having an opposition with Pluto and Mars. This just feels like the energy to move mountains. If there are any sudden interruptions or sudden calls to action, it's like you're able to do it and to feel confident in doing it. Um, yeah, it just as much as like the 17th, 18th feel more restful, the 19th and 20th feel more busy and active. So just looked like really great times. It's this waxing gibbous moon, waxing gibbous fire moon. That's very bright and effervescent and fun and, wants to express itself and have a good time. Um, yeah, I don't know. It could be kind of intense. So like rest again, but just looks really invigorating. I wouldn't overextend. I mean, that's kind of my one concern with this type of energy. Anytime we get Mars and Jupiter square, the moon's just plugging right into that. Anytime Pluto is here with power dynamics, like just make sure on like the 20th, we're still not making promises that we can't keep because there's just this energy in the air of like devotion and big commitments and promises and uh not overextending, not feel if you feel pressured for some reason, whatever the circumstances are, if there's power dynamics at play, don't let those push you into any directions where you feel less empowered or where you're overextending or saying yes to too many things. Uh, that's my only concern with that T square. Very vigorous. And at this point too, we are having our conjunction finally of Mercury and Chiron with Rahu right there. So my thoughts for this were on the 20th, especially words can be weapons or medicine. So make your choice. If you've got a table of words available to you, uh, I think our word choice is going to matter. And because the pace here is so fast, we do want to make sure that we are slowing down enough to choose words wisely. With Chiron, my two main buckets, we think about the wounded healer. So get into more of that. Chiron was a centaur who was a very sad story, rejected at birth, not cared for by original circumstance, really had to get taken care of by someone else. They had a wound that they couldn't fix, but they still became like this amazing coach, teacher, physician, healer type person who took care of other people who had been harmed or rejected, who taught heroes and all kinds of important people. And so with Chiron, yes, a wound, but also medicine, and then teachers and mentors and those types of themes. So maybe we have a really important conversation with a teacher or a mentor around this time, anytime, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of next week. Uh, maybe, especially the older you are, and granted, I don't think that it really depends on so many things in the life, but it's like, when do I get, from being on the wound side more to the healing side? If we had to choose, we're probably in both all the time, but um, I think the older people get, just naturally, the more we kind of figure out what is hurtful to us or what is harmful to us, and we figure out how to navigate that. And we get on the more healing side of things. So that's why I think there can be really potent healing here. But if we're not quite there yet with it, it could just be a flaring up or an activation of wounds around these, Aries topics, whatever those are. And with Mercury being here, Gemini and Virgo stuff too. So for this theoretical Scorpio rising person, perhaps there's a wound, well, in their health place. Maybe it's a literal wound. Um, maybe it's something about conflict in general, how they have conflict. Maybe it's about labor. Maybe it's an ouchy thing that goes along with their labor life. And this could be something really healing about it. It could be something that is a flare up of an pre-existing condition, so to speak. But for this person, it's not just about sixth house health, conflict, labor. It's also going to bring in topics of exchange, eighth house, collaboration and exchange, friends and groups with the 11th, Mercury ruling the 11th of friends and groups, but also hopes, dreams, and aspirations. So challenges, teaching, learning about those aspirations and what the consequences to those are. So I think, using your rising sign, you can paint a picture about what this could be about. And this is going to keep being a thing for pretty much well into April. The eclipse we're about to have here highlights all of these same things. So it's Aries and the house topics that have to do with Aries for you, and maybe themes of individuation and being yourself and expressing yourself how you want, doing what you want. But it's also going to be dragging in these topics from Gemini and Virgo and whatever that is for you. So it is kind of a complex picture, but our lives are complex. As above, so below, as above. On that note of you can do your own thing, that doesn't mean you have to do it alone. It feels like the example that I put in my notes was from Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. It's like, yep, you're up there by yourself. It is your journey alone, but they have a phone a friend option and you can pull the crowd. Like, so we have those options, and it doesn't take away that you did it by yourself or you did your own thing or whatever, if you ask for help. And then on the 21st, yeah, wow. And then we get the exact Venus Saturn conjunction. Um, again, being very soft, as soft as we can be, which I think will be very possible because we are in Pisces after all with Neptune. Definitely can be compassionate. But with these doubts or delays or burdens or challenges, loss, commitment, whatever the Saturn topic is, responsibilities, can we be, like as Corey Muscara says, I'm sure this is my other bingo board, I say it all the time. Corey Muscara says, hold yourself to the highest standards, but also hold yourself with the greatest compassion. When Venus is involved here, that goes with our relationships too, holding each other to really high standards, but holding each other also with great compassion. So being like, yeah, that person was a dick, but also I can understand why they might have been that way. Conditioning, all understanding those conditions, curious, compassionate, asking questions if there are doubts. That might be really helpful here. Because I think we can make a lot of, in Pisces, a lot of stories or ideas about what might happen or what could happen. Saturn is like, no, but what's really here though? What is actually here? And how can we be kind with what is actually here and accepting with what is actually here? So this, again, 21st, really, and a lot of this might be happening internally. Pisces is an internal sign. This might be a whole conversation you're having with yourself about commitments. No one in your life might know that you are having this internal reckoning about your relationships and how you come into those. So it doesn't have to be happening externally, but if all that stuff's happening, know that it'll start lightening up here now, the 22nd of March. After that, we're going to have Venus leaving their conversation with Saturn. Okay, we've had the discussion about how we want to see this area operate. And now Mars comes in on the 22nd into Pisces and is going to act, hopefully, and bring some action and some effort into all of these considerations and thoughts that have been had around the Pisces stuff in your chart. And this brings me to my one kind of happy, not horrible delineation for Mars and Saturn, TM. A new 2-year cycle of effort opening up. So every 2 years, Mars and Saturn meet, and they've been meeting in Aquarius. So it's not like we haven't done this before. We did this last year. I think they were 2 years ago when they were together in Aquarius. New 2-year cycle of effort. So think back, for this Scorpio rising person in their fourth house of home, family, dwelling, land, ancestry. Maybe they've been working their buns off on something down there for the last 2 years, and now they can look back and see all the effort that they did. In this person's fifth house, now maybe a new cycle of effort related to children or romance or rest. And it's like these two intense planets having very serious conversations about how much rest is or is not happening here. So new 2-year cycles of effort opening up. That's what I think about that. Let's see, on the 21st. Yeah. 21st, moon opposite Mars. Kind of mind your own business energy a bit. So, boy, on the 21st, Venus and Saturn, serious relationship thinkings or thoughts or whatever. This is a little prickly time here, I guess, especially on notice, like Thursday, the 21st in the evening in the central time zone. So if you're in the global west time zones, that's more late in the day on Thursday for Africa, Europe, and then farther east Asia, and then eventually Australia. This kind of moon opposite Mars is going to hit you on Friday. So this is where I'm not asking people on dates. I'm not asking people for candy. If I feel like there's a spiciness, I decide whether or not I would like to fuck with that spiciness. Pick your battles, essentially. This is pick your battle energy late on Thursday into Friday. And then we get the moon on Friday into Saturday, depending on where you are, opposing Saturn, which is a tough aspect for the moon. So 21st and the 22nd, yeah, maybe mind your own business days just a little bit if at all possible. I know that's a luxury not all of us have. On the 21st, like if you have an office door, close it at work, close your door. I never had a door. That's why I always bring that up. When I was a pharmacist, I did not have a door. Not until at the very end, I had a door, but not for like the 12 years before that. It's a big deal to be able to have a door that closes at work. You can avoid a lot. And yeah, I don't know. I won't get into it. So then on the 21st, Sun sextile Pluto, Venus conjunct Saturn at 6:09 p.m. Central Time. The moon is opposite Mars. Now, after the 21st and the 22nd, after that, Venus finally starts applying to Jupiter, and that's much better. So then on like the 23rd, then we get a little reprieve. I think 23rd and 24th, it's like Venus gets a little break. So our relationships get a little break. So if 21st, 22nd relationship stuff got wonky, or you just felt a lot of tension inside, and nothing happened outside of yourself, then 23rd of March should feel like a little bit more of a relief. Venus is also now 3 degrees away from Saturn on the other side, so that feels a little bit better. Sun is away from that sextile with Pluto, so a little bit less intense. So yeah, the 23rd is looking a little bit more chill than the previous few days. Mars enters Pisces, and on the 22nd, I should talk about that probably. On the 23rd, there is a benefic enclosure. This is when it's really short. It's when the moon is between 15 and 16 degrees of Virgo. Oh, let's see here. Yeah, so like Saturday morning in Central Time, late morning, it is exactly, so a benefic enclosure of the moon, 7:54 a.m. Central Time to 10:21 a.m. Central Time. So morning in the West, afternoon and evening, more Eastern global time zones. So 23rd is again a bit of relief after the previous few days. But let's stop and talk about Mars and Pisces. And before I do, I will check in with the chat. Hmm. I just, oh, I know what I did. I just figured it out, y'all. I don't know. I don't know what I've done, but I forgot to hit record. I don't remember having to hit record in the past. Maybe it's fine. I'm just going to ignore the technical stuff. I thought I was having a technical difficulty. I'm not sure if I am. I guess I'll find out in a minute. My tarot read for this evening was like not great, so I don't know. I don't know what's going to go on. Anyway, let's talk about Mars and Pisces. So Mars in Pisces, I know we don't like automatically think, ooh, Mars and Pisces, that's where Mars likes to be. But actually, they do pretty well in here. I'm not quite sure of the exact linkage of it, but I know Patrick Watson did this really excellent, basically, he did like a spreadsheet of all of the dignities of all of the planets. And like Pisces for Mars was one of the better signs for Mars to be in. So it's a water sign. They have some triplicity dignity here. If you know what that means, you know what that means. If you don't, that's okay. Don't worry about it. It's a night sign. They're a nighttime planet on the night sec team. So overall, I mean, Mars does just fine in Pisces. Now, the thing that's a little different is that, Mars likes to be focused, go directly at something. Pisces is a bit more scattered. Mars likes to go directly for stuff usually. In Pisces, it's less direct and more responsive. So it almost can feel a little scorpionic, I think, sometimes just having Mars in a water sign like this. But overall, not a bad place for Mars. Now, is it going to be frustrating for Mars having them with Saturn? Yes. Mars wants to go and do stuff. Saturn wants to stop, take stock, make sure we've checked off all of our boxes before we go. So Mars can get a little annoyed with that. So, this first part of this co-presence, pretty much throughout March into April, we're going to have Mars being a bit frustrated. So if we can hold tension for that, that's the ideal. I am actually, okay, it's bothering me too much. I think I might be having a technical difficulty. I'm going to stop for a minute and come back and just make sure. So I'm going to pause stuff. I'll be right back. I figured it out. I think I figured it out. Hold on. There. I don't know what happened, y'all. I don't know how this happened, but I started off on one live that I had queued up, and I bet I set the date of this other one wrong or something. I don't quite understand how this has all gone down, but somehow we're still here and somehow we're still running and somehow y'all are now on this chat because I was like, this other chat has gone crickets. So I'm glad I looked through these things and figured it out. I don't know how this is going to come out. I got to do a lot of sorting out. Anyway, I'm losing watchers. Hold on. Let's get this train going again. I got to catch up. Look at all these beautiful comments that everyone's been giving and I haven't been seeing. Thank you everyone for your patience. Oh, hi Fionn Cleary, another great astrologer in the house. Hi Art Quirk. Hi Creativity. Welcome back. All right. Let's see. Thank you so much for your patience, everyone. Hello, Neha. Hello, Timothy. Good to see both of you. Yeah, Creativity. I don't know why there's two of me. Um, I don't know. I don't know. I'm just gonna continue. But Ardquark said something interesting here. Mutual benefic reception. Oh, thank you for showing me that and reminding me about that. So Ardquark has mentioned that right now we have a mutual reception. Thank you. I forgot to mention this. So, Venus having gone from Aquarius to Pisces, having a big increase in space points, big increase in dignity. What makes it even better is this mutual reception with Jupiter. So basically, a mutual reception is just a fancy term for two planets exchanging signs. Jupiter is in Venus's sign, and Venus is in Jupiter's sign of Pisces, if we're doing our traditional rulership scheme. So that means it's like two best friends, and now they got each other on speed dial. So it's like the Taurus and the Pisces stuff in our charts are working so well together this month. So for the month of March and April, if you're really trying to squeeze the juice out of the sky, like focus on whatever house topics are associated with Pisces and Taurus for you and try to squish them together. For me, this is my home and my money. I'm going to try to squish them together. My money, my resources, and my parents. I'm going to go see my parents, something like that. So thank you so much, Ardquark. I appreciate you. That's what I'm talking about. So, all right. Thanks for figuring it out, everyone. Thanks for somehow making it. We all made it over here. Uh, right. So back at it. Benefic enclosure on the 23rd. Oh, we were talking about Mars. They like Pisces. They don't have a problem being in Pisces, I don't think, for the most part, as long as we can stay focused. And I think, again, just the restraint of Saturn is going to be frustrating. So look at the Pisces place of your chart. If you're feeling a lot of tension, a lot of internal restlessness or discomfort about those topics, hang in there. This is temporary. This is not going to last forever. And if, in fact, if you can at least get your buns past like mid-April, so like kind of mid-March to mid-April, we can see a lot of frustration in Pisces with those things. Hang in there till mid-April. All right. Yes, Venus sextile Jupiter on the 24th. So that mutual reception that we were just talking about that makes the connection between Venus and Jupiter so much stronger. Now we're getting just a really nice sextile between those two planets. So the planets of relationship and generosity, of partnerships, relationships, and learning and knowledge. So on the 23rd, again, kind of more of a chill day than we've had recently. And then maybe being able to enjoy time with loved ones, enjoy time being creative, making love, making food, all like the nice, warm, and fuzzy things of life. Like do those things on the 23rd, and it should come a little bit more easily than it would otherwise. I mean, golly, even on the 24th, we're just kind of in the wake of that. Moon applies to an opposition with Neptune on the 24th. I mean, it happens every month. If there's a little bit of extra confusion at the end of the day on the 24th, that might be the moon opposite Neptune. And it is also, now we are coming into our eclipse. So I really kind of designated, and this is me being more on the doomsaying side of things. So take this with a handful of salt, depending on your planetary rulers for the year. So by annual profection, which planets are your time lords as a whole timing technique. Basically, at any given time, if we're going by Hellenistic astrology, not every single planet is like loud on doing their stuff at every given moment of life. And some years from birthday to birthday, especially, we can see different planets becoming in charge of things. And so, with that kind of activation of planets, certain transits become more important. So for instance, if you're not in a Mercury Time Lord year, Mercury retrogrades might not shock your world. Maybe you'll notice them, but they won't change the course of your life. Maybe, if you're in not a sun or a moon year, maybe eclipses won't be as important for you. But if you're in like a Leo or a Cancer sun, moon, profection activated type year, maybe the eclipses will be more important for you or more impactful. So, it really depends on your own chart, your own timing, which is a different dice roll for all of us. I would say though that like the 25th of March, like the 28th of March, I am also designating as mind your own business days. Mileage may vary, but it's a weird few days. So I am going to talk about these eclipses. There is a benefic enclosure on the 28th. which is why I've capped it off at the 28th. There's a lot of weird fallout after the eclipse that like the moon is talking to people, and I'm like, I don't know how nice that's going to feel at first. But by the 28th of March, especially from 12:58 p.m. Central Time and 10:01 p.m. Central Time on the 28th, that is our benefic enclosure. So this might be our first reprieve after the eclipse. Now let's talk about the eclipse. So, first things first, lunar eclipses, the ones where we can see the moon. That's how I remember which one is which, a solar eclipse or a lunar eclipse. Full moon is the lunar one because we can see the moon. The solar eclipse is the new moon one because we can see the sun. We can't see the moon usually, at least not when it's not in front of the sun. Lunar full moon eclipses, it's like a full moon, but louder, but bigger, but more impactful. So the same things as a full moon in general, realizations, the kind of peaking or culmination of an effort, the peaking or culmination of some kind of narrative over the last couple of weeks. And a lot of times, just internally, it can be an understanding, a realization, a coming together of things you've been thinking. So yeah, exciting, intense, maybe dramatic, and look to the Libra parts of your chart. So for me, this is in my 9th house. I think I have a publication coming out around then. It might not be till the next month, but I think that's going to be what it is for me. It's a culmination of work that I've done, and it's really important to me. So that would be like my lunar eclipse. Now, this person in the 11th, maybe it's some kind of culmination with their friends. Maybe they've been really trying for a while to make friends, and now they're looking around and being like, got friends. Cool. So if we want clues, look to the house that Libra is in and those house topics. Also think to like 6 months ago, what was going on? And now this is kind of the next 6 month plot point. So October, thinking what has changed since October, maybe especially around the Libra areas of our chart. Now, the following eclipse is going to be on April 8th, and that is going to be a new moon eclipse, which is like a new chapter opening up. So not as much the peaks and the culminations and like that visibility of the moon. It's like shining a light on something really loudly or brightly in Libra. On April 8th, this is a new chapter opening up. It's big beginnings, big endings. Endings and beginnings always kind of come together. So new chapters in the Aries part of your chart. So for this hypothetical Leo rising, it would be a new chapter with their 9th house, long distance travel, publishing, their beliefs, their worldviews, how they see the world. Their big ideas about stuff, anything like that. So that's kind of if you want just bare bones, that's what the eclipses are. But whatever this kind of Libra axis is for you, whatever houses those are across. So again, for this Leo rising person, it's going to be across their 3rd and 9th houses of communication, learning, travel, belief. That's where it's going to be showing up for them. If you're a Libra rising, it's going to be with your relationship stuff. Libra, Aries rising, it'll be with your relationship. If you are a Gemini, Sagittarius rising, it's going to be with, well, let's look. Because I can't think that hard. Your 3rd, oh, that would also be your 3rd and, no. Yeah, your 3rd and your 9th. Maybe. No, 11th and 5th. So if you're a Gemini rising, these eclipses are going to be they also rebalance. I feel like the eclipses come in and they create a bit of a disturbance, and they are not stable energies, but they do rebalance stuff. So, whatever's kind of going on March, April in Aries and Libra, I kind of just watch it and try not to act on it too much if at all possible. I try not to bring new things into being if I can. But, it's also not the end of the world. I see people who have gotten married on eclipses and they are in like a 30-year marriage and it's fine. But yeah, they do see the eclipses come up in their relationship. every 6 months, something exciting or new or interesting happens, or, some kind of plot point, but it doesn't have to be a bad thing. But again, if I'm gonna, choose a time to initiate something, this is a really potent, it's not like you can't use it. I'm not going to say you shouldn't or you can't and not have good results, but it's like anytime you're wielding a really sharp blade or a really powerful tool, you got to know how to use it and navigate it and hold it. It's not like a beginner pet, maybe. Now, another way of looking at this with eclipses, I got an election once from a different astrologer, and they elected for me to end my job on an eclipse. And the idea was that and at the time, I didn't have any intention of not going back to it, but that was what they had said was like, hey, if you want to make a big change and there's no going back, really make it impactful, like eclipses can actually be really cool for that. So, there's a lot of opinions out there about what to do or not do around eclipse energy. That is really up to you to decide. Just know it's kind of like more of a unfamiliar pet, and you have to know how to deal with it before getting it. Let's see, is there anything? I guess let me get into the details with the first eclipse, and then I'm going to do just a little bit with the second one, and we'll wrap it up. So this first eclipse on March 25th. Now the ruler of it, Mars, can't see it. So I'm not really sure, in terms of the resourcing, like how well will we be able to navigate this eclipse? While Mars cannot see it, the sun is here, and they know this place really well. It's like a vacation home they've been to a lot, so they know like where the bathroom is and stuff and where the snacks are in the cabinet. It's just that they can't really get a hold of the person who owns the snacks to ask them if they can have them. So in English, with this eclipse, it doesn't seem like the most functional weather again to like start a business. Chiron is here. So that's going to, of course, add in those notes of potential healing or some maybe ouchiness. But, the nice thing about Moon and Libra, they don't hate being here at all. And we can really have a diplomatic kind of mindset around things. So as much as there might be a lot of feelings and a lot of restlessness to act on those feelings, it's like this moon is more detached, objective, rational in Libra. So I don't think this eclipse is going to be one where we're like off the rails or anyone's going to be too wild. I think that Libra moon is too diplomatic for that. In the first decan, so I always like to look at the decans. I like to look at these first 10 degrees because that just gives us an added layer of nuance. It is so much about the beginning of a journey in the first part of Aries. And the first part of Libra, if you're into the tarot at all, it's the two of swords, swords being air. And it can be about decisions, making decisions. It could be a realization that helps us make a decision. T. Susan Chang in 36 Secrets, she talks about this area of Libra being an inhale and an exhale, being adjusting, balancing, having a constant dance of things, the coming together of two ideas, a lot of contemplation and consideration, even editing of things. So very insightful. I'm looking forward to it in terms of insight about Libra areas in our life. And then, the only thing would be on the other side of that coin, being overly careful, overly diplomatic, thinking too much, analyzing too much, avoiding decisions, anything like that, where it's like too much thinking, self-censorship, that might be a sign that there's a little too much Libra going on. Yeah, I think that those are kind of the main things I wanted to say. Mercury really is the main planet to view this whole thing. All of these planets in Pisces can't see this lunation. Jupiter, they cannot see it. Uranus can't see it. So really just like Mercury and Pluto. And it's interesting because Mercury's well, they're not going to make that square with Pluto. They're going to go backwards, but it's very between Libra and Aries, and Mercury is there to try to communicate about it. Mercury is probably also bringing in Gemini and Virgo considerations for those of you who want to add that in. But, overall, it's just like words. I still think we're in that kind of words can be medicine, words can be weapons. So just be careful around the 25th, what you're saying and how you're pacing it and how you're toning it if you're in a sensitive situation. So why I had said like the 25th through the 28th were kind of mind your own business days. And we have the eclipse, and then right after that, the moon opposes Chiron. So we've been talking about Chiron. We got the vibe. It's not our favorite. After that, they're going to have a conversation with Mercury. And then finally, after that, when the moon moves into Scorpio, then we're going to have moon being witnessed by both of the benefics. Got the moon here in Scorpio, a trine with Venus, and opposition with Jupiter. And we can get that benefic enclosure that we're going to get on the 28th. So, yeah, again, 25th through the 28th, if you need to do that thing where you go into the other room and let your adrenaline kind of dissipate and do its thing, that sounds like a good plan. I guess, I'm kind of rushing through a little bit of the end of the month. On the 30th, the moon is squaring Saturn on the 30th, and then later on the 31st, things speed up a little bit. So I kind of wondered if the 30th, this square with Saturn, it might just be us feeling that frustration a little bit on the 30th. And then after it clears Saturn and Mars, the pace, I think, should pick up a little bit more on the 31st with things. See if there's anything else. So on the 31st, I guess, by now too. So remember what I said about Rahu being kind of that increasing energy. It dials things up. It makes things more, but also frenzied, frantic, confused. And now the sun is moving toward that very increasing type of energy of Rahu. So as we transition into April, this is like a lot of gas in the tank. Sun in Aries with Rahu is like a lot of effort and ability to get things going and express ourselves. But we don't want to overdo it. Make sure you're resting as much as you're working. Make sure you're listening as much as you're talking, resting, doing all so that we're not overdoing any one side of things. Put some notes about early April, but again, just to close things off with the second eclipse of the two on April 8th. Now it's in Aries, it's in the middle decan. This is the solar sun-ruled decan, sun-ruled 10 degrees of Aries, so very, very sun, and very, very like, this is what I'm doing. I am walking the walk. I am not talking the talk. We are really, it's a new chapter in how we're going to embody those Aries things. I know that word embody is way overused. When I hear the word embody or integrate or any of those buzzwords, in my mind, I just think I'm using what I learned to be different. I'm practicing this thing that I'm trying to do to be different. Doesn't mean you're going to get it every time. In Aries, we try again and again and again and again and again. So this is a great time to just kick off that effort that is going to be this constant redoing it, doing it again and again and again. What are we doing? Being authentic. What are we doing? Being assertive, being honest, going for stuff, doing stuff, and in a way that aligns, hopefully after all of this Pisces stuff, in a way that aligns with our values and what we hope for ourselves. So big opportunity to have new starts, fresh starts. Not only is it the equinox, which is kind of a nice time to turn things over and start again, no matter what hemisphere you're in, but especially, with an eclipse and that tilling up of the soil. I feel like the eclipses till up soil that's really hard and dry and we can't really use it. And it makes it into a more rebalanced type of soil that I can actually plant seeds in more in April. So that's what I have to say. I'm going to leave this Mars Saturn business to talk about next time. But remember, new 2-year cycle of effort opening up. It doesn't have to be the worst thing ever. I'm going to check in with the chat and see if there's any questions and then figure out how I'm going to do technology stuff. Clarkson, happy birthday in 2 weeks. Oh my gosh. So your birthday is probably going to be around some of this stuff. Yeah. So very transformative year. Yeah, pretty much if anyone who has a birthday between April 25th or between March 25th and April 8th, anyone who has a birthday in there, in that what everyone calls the eclipse portal, don't panic. But yeah, it's a good year. It will be a very good year to initiate big new changes, new chapters. What a cool solar return chart to implement changes with, because that's what a lot of this stuff is talking about. Before we had Uranus being the agent of change in the sky, before we had Pluto being this agent of transformation, all of that kind of change, transformation stuff, I feel like was much more Mars and Aries. It was about Mars. Mars is our agent of change, tension, transition, transformation, all that stuff. And Aries, especially with the initiatory element of Aries and that beginning, very much change. So a lot of this, and yeah, I mean, water is wet, what is life except change constantly? But when we see cardinal energy, eclipse energy, new cycles turning over, yep, change is afoot. And if you got a birthday, you'll have a front row seat to that in the next couple weeks. So does anyone have any final questions? Last call. Thanks for navigating technological snafus with me. Okay, it looks like that might be it. So tomorrow, I am actually going to be here again. I'm going to be here, or no, not tomorrow, on Friday. So usually I have my question and response stuff on the second Thursday of every month. I actually am not going to be available tomorrow, so I'm going to do it on Friday. So come back to this channel. I have my live set up. Hopefully it'll work next time. And that'll be Friday the 15th at 7 p.m. Central Time, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. I have already done my call for questions for this month. So I've got a really good lineup of stuff. We're going to talk about sunset and sunrise birth charts and how those are kind of maybe ambiguous. Some questions again about essential and accidental dignity. So that's a topic we've discussed and we will discuss again. There was a few really good questions. So I'll see you here on Friday. Let me stop my share. Yeah, and announcements. I don't think I have anything. I'm really not, I haven't been booking that much lately. So wide open if you're looking for bookings. I'm really only booked out like barely at all. You can use the discount code AstrologyForecast. That will get you a 10% off discount on any of my services. I am part of Chris Brennan's referral list. So if you're looking for an astrologer, you're not really sure who a good one would be, especially if it's like your first reading and you've never done this before, definitely happy to have you. So if you want to sign up for my newsletter, that is how you find out the other discounts that I have going on. So you can sign up. I have a link below, or at least I will, or I should, for my website, my newsletter, www.aligninglightastrology.com. If you have any questions or concerns about anything I've said tonight, you can email me at aligninglighastro@gmail.com. That is shortened, aligninglighastro@gmail.com. And I think that's about it. I'll see you all on Friday. And hopefully, I mean, gal, hopefully I can figure out what I've done here. It might be that I cut off like the first like 19 minutes or so. It was like 19 minutes and then it switched over. So if that's gone, I'm sorry. Anyway, thanks for your patience, everyone. I hope you have a really good couple weeks. I'll catch y'all at the next forecast. Catch me at the Q&A in a couple days.